cash out refinance or the home equity line of credit. We're going to talk about all the details, which one is right for you, and then we're going to hit the whiteboard, do a couple examples. Hey, my name's Jess Vergali, and first of all, thanks so much for tuning in. If you get value out of these videos, hit the subscribe, hit the little bell thing, and if you'd like other videos on any topic that I can cover, leave a comment below. Okay, let's get into it. The cash out refinance versus the home equity line of credit. So what is the cash out refinance? Well, let's back up a second and figure out what a refinance is. And a refinance is simply the replacing of your current mortgage with a new mortgage. A lot of times people do refinancing to get a different rate or term, sometimes called a rate and term refinance. What we're talking about today is the cash out refinance. So instead of just replacing an existing mortgage, we're replacing the existing mortgage with a bigger mortgage. And the difference between the two is the cash that we want the bank to write us a check for. What we use that cash for is going to be up to us. It could be capital improvements to a property. It could be buying other investment properties. Most banks will allow you to take 80% LTV or loan to value of a property. So for example, if you have $1 million property, a bank will usually allow you to put 80% or $800,000 of debt on that property. If the property has a mortgage of $500,000, so in that example, an $800,000 new mortgage and a $500,000 old mortgage, once that old mortgage is paid off, that $300,000 difference, that's the cash out. Now, the way these mortgages work is exactly the same way when you got a mortgage to begin with. It's usually 25 or 30-year amortization. So the rates today generally hovering between 2.5% and 4.5%, depending on if you're getting a fixed or adjustable rate or variable. So what normally happens is you go to the bank, they'll do an appraisal, and really the process is very similar to when you first got a mortgage for the property. When it comes to closing costs, again, very similar to the original mortgage that you would have had with the property. That could be title fees, origination fees, underwriting fees, and any administration fees. So that is the cash out refinance. Moving on to the home equity line of credit. The way I like to think about the home equity line of credit is it's this giant credit card attached to your home. Now I want to be clear here, the home equity line of credit doesn't always have to be associated with your principal residence. I've seen banks allow home equity lines of credits or HELOCs on investment properties as well. So like I said, very similar to a credit card, it's a revolving line of credit. So that means you have access to the funds, but you don't have to utilize the funds. In our first example with the cash out refinance, because it's a new mortgage, you have to start making payments right away. So once you get that mortgage, you're paying. With the home equity line of credit, because it's a revolving line of credit, if you have, for instance, a $200,000 home equity line of credit, but you don't use any of that $200,000, you don't pay interest on it. So very similar to the cash out refinance, when it comes to how much the bank is gonna allow you to borrow on a property, 80% is a good rule of thumb. So keep in mind, 80% will be the total you can borrow on a property with your existing mortgage plus your home equity line of credit. And when we go to the whiteboard, we'll go into a little bit more detail of how that looks exactly. I should mention too, some banks will actually not allow you to borrow 80% for a home equity line of credit. I saw a bank today, 65% was their maximum for the HELOC. Now, when it comes to fees, they are much smaller than doing a new mortgage, refinancing in a cash out scenario. This is because there's just not as much being done. The bank basically requires you to get a checking account, and that's where they fund your home equity line of credit. So closing costs, I've really seen just administration fees. Even when it comes to an appraisal, sometimes they don't do an appraisal at all, and sometimes they'll do what's called a desk appraisal, which is kind of what it sounds like. It's somebody at a desk using their software and not actually going out to the property and doing the appraisal that way. So a benefit when it comes to the home equity line of credit is that the payments are interest only, and you only make payments on the amount that you use. So the way the interest rate works for a home equity line of credit, it's typically the prime rate plus some percentage rate. The prime rate today hovers, if you're in Canada, 2.5%. If you're in the States, I think it's closer to 3.5%. And a HELOC I'm working on right now is prime plus 1. So prime plus 1%. That's the interest rate. So I'm a visual person, so let's jump to the whiteboard, do an example, and iron out the mechanics of both the HELOC and the cash out refinance. All right, we are now in front of the whiteboard. Got my fancy father-like all caps here. Anyways, cash out refinance, HELOC. Some of the deets here. These are the assumptions and details that we're gonna make. So in our example, we're gonna have the cost, the initial acquisition at $1 million. the LTV, or as we mentioned before, the loan to value is going to be 80%. So the bank is going to say we can do a cash out refinance or HELOC up to 80% of the appraised value. So the new appraised value is 1.5 million. So we're at $1 million, we're now at 1.5 million. And the original mortgage is $800,000. So let's see what that looks like. So we now come out to this new price, $1.5 million. So we went from 1 million to 1.5. We want to figure out what can we do here from a cash out perspective. Well, what we do is we have to multiply the 1.5 by the loan to value that the bank is willing to give us. So that's 80%. 1.5 multiplied by 80%, $1.2 million. So this is the new mortgage that we're gonna put on the property. And remember, it's not like the HELOC where you only pay on the interest you use. When you get this new mortgage, you are paying on it right away. So you have to be certain that the funds that you're gonna take out, you need them for something. Maybe you have an investment property, you're putting money into your building, whatever, you're using it for something. So we've established $1.2 million. Now we have to pay off the old mortgage of $800,000. One assumption I'm going to make here is that usually after time, your mortgage goes down, right? You pay it off. Here, just for simplicity, we're gonna keep it at the same price. Okay, so 1.2, we take away that mortgage that we had, we are left with $400,000 in the cash out. So you got this guy here, he's pretty happy because he has a check from the bank for $400,000. Also, he's got a new mortgage, so let's put a negative there, for 1.2. You know, this process, like we said, the appraisal would have been done for the new value of 1.5. He would have gone through the process of getting approved for this new mortgage, and now that's his new mortgage. All right, now to the HELOC. Let's also assume that the property is now worth 1.5 million. We did an appraisal, we know that. The mechanics are actually almost identical. The only difference is we're gonna have two things at the end of the day. Instead of having a $400,000 check from the bank, the difference between the old mortgage and the new, we're gonna have a certain amount that will be the HELOC, that'll be a revolving line of credit or that big credit card we talked about before, and we're gonna have our existing mortgage. So again, to figure out how much we can basically borrow, we have to use that 80% LTV. So 80% times 1.5, same story, we have $1.2 million that we can borrow from this property. Now, since we already have the $800K, since we already have that as a mortgage, the home equity line of credit will just be the difference between that 1.2 and 800. Similar in this situation because we use the same LTV. Here, we're gonna have 400,000 as a HELOC. So, same guy, he's probably just as happy. He's got an $800,000 mortgage, so he has the same mortgage, but now he has a $400,000 balance. So this is a $400,000 balance that he can use. Now, like we said before, he doesn't have to use all this 400. If he uses 50, he'll pay on 50. If he uses 100, he'll pay on 100. Now, the simple way to understand the formula, whether it's a cash out refinance or it's a HELOC, the way you do it is you go to the bank, you figure out their loan to value percentage, right? The amount that they're gonna allow you to borrow up to. You multiply that by the usually appraised value. Then you subtract the mortgage, the existing debt, and that will give you either one, the cash out portion for the cash out refinance, or two, the total HELOC the bank will give you. And like we said, these LTVs, they can range. For home equity lines of credit, they can be 65, they can be 75, 80, cash out refinance. Also, every bank will have a different number or different percentage, and it'll depend on the individual. Credit score, income, all those things. So that's it. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Now, at the end of the day, the HELOC, the cash out refinance, one isn't necessarily better than the other. It really depends on who's using it and what you're using that cash for. Okay, back to the desk. Okay, thanks so much for tuning in. Like I said before, if you get value out of these videos, hit that subscribe, hit the little bell, and leave a comment below. And also leave a comment if you want to see a video that I haven't done. Anyways, I'm out.